Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Hangover. I'm your Steel Curtain Network host, Daniel, alongside Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm doing awesome. I had it on mute because I didn't want to make any noise during that great intro. Steeler football with you all day.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I just heard the back end of that. You kind of blipped out there for a little bit, but I'm glad you're here. So, week one of training camp is in the books. How excited are you about football finally being a thing? It's in the news. We can stop talking about the players of the past and talk about the players of the present. How excited are you about that?
Oh, it's every year. It's just the answer prayer. Because usually by this time of the year, my Pirates are already out of any kind of contention for anything, and it's just the dog days of summer. Not much sports going on, and I'm a sports fanatic, so I'm so excited when Steeler training camp starts up.
Yeah, me too, man. This is the most optimistic time of the year. That's what I try to tell everybody. Is like, as of now, all the holes have been addressed. The
Mm-hmm.
players are, everybody that the Steelers selected was the right player. Everything went
Mm-hmm.
right. It's not until football really starts to, get maybe a dose of reality. But, at this point, it should be the time where everybody's most optimistic. Not pads yet. There's no pads, but some football we've seen a little bit of aggression. But before we get into the ins and outs of training camp and things like that, the Pittsburgh Steelers made another signing. Omar Khan does it again, comes in, brings in Kwon Alexander, inside linebacker, brings more depth. Or is it a starting role? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I want to mention something. You said something uh, there about the offseason and how they made all the right moves. And I'm older than you. I'm an old timer now, and I've been watching them since the 70s. And this is there'll never be an offseason like 74. We know that,
Right.
especially the draft class. But it was a different NFL back then, no free agency. And this has been the most interesting, exciting, and efficient offseason ever. So if you've got to experience this year, this is not the norm. Like, I have a lot of faith in Con and Waddle and them guys, but we may not see another offseason like this one. So I think they have accelerated the rebuild by at least a year or two,
Mm-hmm.
whereas they can be competitive. And if everything falls right, which you need good fortune and good health as much as you need good players. But if everything falls right, I think they can contend this year. So, but as far as Kwon Alexander, it's just another instance of Khan just filling each hole, presumable or perceived hole, with experienced quality players.
Mm-hmm.
Khan, Kwon Alexander is a experienced. He's kind of a hybrid. Everybody's wanting him for his coverage ability, but he's actually better at run
Mm-hmm.
stopper. But he is better at coverage than anybody else they have right now. So I think it's the way they've got this rotation set up with the smorgasbord of talent that they have in that room.
Mm-hmm.
They will probably pick starters kind of almost on a weekly basis, depending on matchups. Like if you're playing the Ravens or the Browns are a run heavy team, you might want more Mark Robinson and Landon Roberts. If you're playing the Bengals or a team that's more pass happy, you might want more Holcomb and more Alexander. They've just got so many interchangeable pieces. It's very exciting. And I said it last night, and I'll say it again. Top to bottom, this depth chart can go 6 deep because guys like Muse and Kwiatkowski can play. They're really good special teams guys. And this is the deepest middle linebacker or inside linebacker depth chart I can remember the Steelers having.
No, I agree. This is definitely a very deep team. The way that this team has been constructed, and it has Andy Weidl's fingerprints all over it, especially in with the size of the players, especially up in the trenches. He's gone for some giants, and you're looking at also what he's done in the tight end room and receivers. It's been a very exciting offseason. You mentioned that. It's been not the norm. I mean, I guess everybody's been kind of just accustomed to what what we've had with Colbert in the past 2 decades. That this is something more aggressive. This is new, and I for one, I couldn't be more pleased. I think that it's been, of course, it has to transition on the field and on Sundays, and if it does, then this would be considered one of the probably greatest off seasons the Pittsburgh Steelers have had. If they can go in and win a couple playoff games, maybe make an appearance in a championship or a little bit further along, it definitely will be a huge turnaround. But when it comes to Kwon Alexander, I do like what he brings. He's a more athletic type of inside linebacker. He's not that bigger guy like a Mark Robinson guy is. He's not that thumper like that. He's been a guy that's had some injury issues. I think that Holcomb has been a guy that's got a couple injuries under his belt.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw this transition here, I thought maybe this could be just depth, but like you mentioned before, the linebackers that the Pittsburgh Steelers currently had prior to Kwon Alexander, in my opinion, were probably more of the run coverage, run defender type of inside linebacker. And with Kwon Alexander's athleticism, I think he can bring that extra coverage ability when needed. I know last season he didn't do so well with the Jets, but that could be just because it was the Jets. I know they had Sauce Gardner. He was a guy that kind of came up through, was unexpectedly well and did things great last season, but they still had a bunch of holes on that team, and he didn't do as well. But he's only 28 years old. I think he still has a lot of football ahead of him, and I like the signing. What do you think about the number 26? Do you think that that's enough wearing for now? Do you think that's going to last him, onto the week 1 of the regular season?
I hope not. I don't like it. I didn't like it when Marcus Allen wore 27. It made sense because he was the safety starting out.
Right.
And he really was always a safety because he definitely wasn't an inside linebacker. But so 27 on him is one thing, but on Alexander, I hope he gets a better number.
Yeah, there was an inside linebacker. What was his name that the Pittsburgh Steelers? Marion. That was number 26.
Mark Barron.
Mark Barron. There we go. Yeah, he always looked weird out there with number 26.
Yeah. But say he was the converted safety.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
So many of them guys that have those numbers, like Keanu Neal, who's a safety for the Steelers now, but he's played some linebacker for teams in the past. Yeah. So he's one of them hybrid guys, and he's always, had a number in the 20s.
Yeah. He still, it looks odd. I still think of Le'Veon Bell when I see 26. Yep. So it's still kind of weird for me. So let's get into training camp. We'll start off with the injuries that have occurred over the last week. The first one that happened, which was a big one, it was more of a scare than anything. Deontay Johnson gets carted off on, I think it was like his first day of practice, ends up, he came back for the next 2 days. So it was just a scare. It came, I think there was a couple of plays that first day that he came up kind of giffy on that knee. And so any concern there with that now that the Steelers are transitioning into pads? Do you think maybe perhaps they lighten the load for a little bit, let him get healthier?
I said it last night, and I was telling people when I heard the temperatures and how hot it was going to be. Now, you're out there in the hundreds in Texas, but people on the East Coast, we're not used to these temperatures. So it was 90 on the field and 100-degree heat index. And I said there's going to be a lot of little sprains and nagging, and guys are going to get some rest. It's only self-preservation.
Yeah.
Guys know their bodies. They know if they feel like they're overheating. I mean, he did it 2 days in a row. The first day he tweaked his knee or whatever, like you said. The next day he had to leave with some heat exhaustion. DeMarvin Leal, he's dealt with heat issues 2 days in a row. I don't know if he has a touch of asthma, but if you do, you're in that kind of heat index. It'll cause you to have flare ups. There was somebody else that had I think it was Connor Hayward. He
Mhm.
had some trouble with the heat, and he does have some asthma issues. I know. So, you're going to see that, but I don't think anything's been of those three guys. It's anything serious to be concerned about.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think so either. You mentioned DeMarvin Leal, and he definitely was one guy that was affected by the heat, which is crazy because he's from San Antonio. He's from my
Yeah,
hometown,
yeah.
and so I would have, I didn't expect to see San Antonio, Texas boy out there struggling with the Pennsylvania heat, but it happens. It's a different heat. There's more humidity, I think, out there, and so when you add that to being probably already getting adjusted to the temperature and up
Hmm.
north, it could play a role. Minka Fitzpatrick has been out for multiple days with a personal matter. I don't really find this to be too concerning. He's a veteran. This is the beginning portion of training camp. I think that there are a handful of players that I would say that you'd be okay with missing some time in training camp, and I think Minka Fitzpatrick is one of them. No concerns for you there?
No, as you said, uh, you want to be cautionary with a guy like him, TJ, Cam, any of them guys. But it doesn't sound like an injury. They're just saying it's a personal issue,
Mhm.
and uh, you know, Tomlin is fine with it, and the organization, and it's a non-issue. Um, it actually probably is reducing his risk of maybe having a small nagging injury or something right here at the start of camp, and hopefully whatever is going on will be taken care of, and he'll be back to his normal self here maybe this week.
Yeah, 100%. I think, Coach Tomlin came out with a couple of words saying that he stands behind him. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we'll be all right with it. A couple of injuries that are a little bit concerning. The first one's going to be DeMonte Casey went down with an ankle injury. It sounds like it's been something pre-existing or something he's been nagging with, but he's going to be out for a little bit. Nothing that's going to extend into like preseason or anything like that. But he is a guy that is playing or competing for that strong safety role. He is a guy that should be expected into that rotation. I think it's a big piece because you're expecting there to be a little bit of a shuffle when it comes to the strong safety, and I think that there's some chemistry that needs to be built within those new players, within himself, Keanu Neal, and I think it's a big missing piece. What do you think about DeMonte Casey?
I think people's going to miss Terrell Edmonds more than they realize
Yeah,
because his durability, he was always out there, and he was just such a tough player. He was a consistent player. You knew what you was going to get. Not splash plays, but reliability and durability was his specialty. Kazee is the opposite. He's very much a splash play player. And, he's had two really healthy seasons, and he led the league in interceptions one of those seasons. The problem is he misses a game or two or three every year, and then he missed, half of last year with that broken arm. So, guys that have tendencies to get injured, even the nagging variety, like a sprained ankle, it is concerning. And because they really going to have to rely on him this year in that deep safety role. He is so good at covering the deep middle. You want him back there. Um, I think the way they're going to use him, hopefully he'll be able to stay healthy because he won't be up in the box or around the line. He's not going to play any type of traditional strong safety role. He's going to be a deep safety, and that's his specialty.
yeah.
And thankfully, there's a couple of guys showing up at camp and looking pretty good. That he might want to get back, get healthy, and reestablish and remind everybody what he's so good at. Because I think this camp he don't want to miss a lot of time.
No, 100%, 100%. And Jennifer brings up a great point. She says that she heard Casey saying that he needs to calm it down during training camps and asked if they had talked to him. They talked to him, last year, broken wrist, now boot. I think that that's quite possible. Maybe perhaps kind of like you mentioned before, specializing him to a specific role, being the deep safety, not so much the hard hitting, strong
Mhm.
safety. It does seem like durability is going to be an issue there. And then the last one, injury that we have to talk about is Alfonso Graham out for the season, torn labrum, I believe it was.
Mhm.
Uh, Unfortunate, I think there was a real battle there for the RB3. One of my surprises of camp so far, Anthony McFarland, may have been, gapping, spreading the gap a little bit between him and Alfonso, but pads aren't on yet. Can't really tell what a running back's going to be able to do once you're out there with defensive players are allowed to hit you. So, it's unfortunate. I know that you were pretty high on Alfonso. You thought maybe perhaps he could have made the team. Um, what are your thoughts on his injury? How does that affect the running back room?
Oh, I'm very disappointed. He was my way too early training camp sensation on offense.
Yeah.
I thought that he had a real chance to
Mhm.
knock off McFarland. Uh, they have, I was reading today, they're trying to create a role for McFarland to get more usage out of that running back three. And they was going to work Graham in there too, though. A lot of slants, working out of the slot, starting in the backfield and then swinging out, pony sets. They had plans, and they were going to let Alfonso Graham compete for that position. And Alfonso Graham is a much better special teams player than Anthony McFarland. So I think he would have beat him out. So it's disappointing. But thankfully, it's not a career threatening or career impacting type of injury. He should be able to be fully recovered and have another opportunity next year. So I wish him luck, and God bless him in his rehab. And but Anthony McFarland's got a golden opportunity right now.
Mhm.
A lot of teams have had running backs go down already here in the early portion or holding down. There's all kind of issues with the running backs. So uh, the Steelers need him to work out now, and McFarland needs to add versatility any way he can to help in that room. I still think that Calvin Austin III will win the primary kick return responsibilities, but you need McFarland to at least be able to do kick returns, even if he's not a punt return.
Yeah, no, 100%. And when it comes to the running back room, Anthony McFarland, he's a guy that, like you mentioned before, this is a golden opportunity.
Yep.
I think he's been taking that opportunity. He's one of my surprises at camp. Thus far, we got to see how the pads go on. Offensive linemen and running backs, in my opinion, I think that there could be a huge difference when you put the pads on and how they are before and after the pads. Right,
Yeah.
trenches is very much so pad oriented, and with the running back having to fight off defenders and things of that nature, I think that those two things go hand in hand. Um, but I do think that Alfonso did have an opportunity based on his possibility of playing in special teams. McFarland has some. Well, I've seen him in warm-ups doing kick return, but that's about it. Punt
Do you
return.
remember his one attempt last year?
I do not remember his one
It
attempt.
was a disaster. I think it was against the Panthers, and he misfielded it or he didn't field it. Then he picked it up and got tackled. I think
Oh
the Steelers
yeah.
started inside their 10. And then that was it. They didn't try him a kick returns no more.
I wouldn't either, So maybe they should have done the same with Gunner last year. But, but for me, he doesn't really bring that special teams aspect, but he has been a bit of a surprise. There's a play that's been circulating out there of him doing a like wheel well or whatever you want to call
The
it.
wheel route, yeah.
Yeah, and catching the ball in a covered two down the field. And this is a play that is very. I remember it from Ben trying this play a couple of years back
Mm-hmm.
with Anthony McFarland. It's different results. He was able to catch Kenny Pickett's, but again, difference was Ben threw it in a game where there was pads and people were tackling him, and no pads here. So we'll see how those things transition. Another person that I think has surprised in camp so far, and this is a guy that I talked about on my personal YouTube channel that I have called State of the Steelers, is Elijah Riley. I said that, I think this guy's going to have a big camp, and this is before camp started. He's had an interception. He's had a sack. There's a opening there for the slot cornerback and also safety position in rotation. Who are your surprises so far that you've heard from camp?
Well, when I mentioned earlier that there's a couple of safeties that are really standing out early, and one of them is Elijah Riley. And as you said, he has slot corner capabilities. He's been very strong there, and that's where he got his interception. But he also is a great blitzer. And what the Steelers have not had since Mike Hilton went to Cincinnati is they haven't had anybody who was effective blitzing out of the slot. Mm-hmm. And Elijah Riley is, he's a safety build. And so he really comes off that edge. He has good speed and power. So he really commits to the blitz. Mm-hmm. So he already had a play that they said he would have had a sack on Pickett, but of course you can't hit the quarterback. Right. But the other safety is Kenny Robertson. Mm-hmm. Now, Kenny played for the West Virginia Mountaineers, so I'm very familiar with him. And as a freshman, he come in and he started getting interceptions in the Big 12. I mean, you just seen he's a ball hawk. He's got a feel. If that ball gets tipped in there, he's there. He's just one of them guys. And he has so much talent. And after his freshman year, they started talking about, this kid, he could be NFL, right? He started getting bad advice. He lost focus. He had trouble at school. He had trouble off campus. And next thing you know, he's out. And so his career, it just has not panned out like I think it could have. And then I think he even went maybe the USFL route or XFL at one point. But now he's back. And he's a guy that can really surprise people and have a shot to making this roster. Mm-hmm. Especially if you have a guy like Kazee or, who struggles with injury. You could open up a door for Kenny Robertson.
100%. Does Kazee play special teams? I don't recall him being out there very often last season, but I'm just going off of memory.
I think he might have a little, but I think they didn't after he come back from injury because they didn't, they was trying to protect him because he's more valuable in that 3 safety set.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Another player that, just coming off the top of my head that I think is playing well right now without the pads, but is another player that I think we're going to have to keep an eye on once the pads get on. That's Nick Herbig. Seems like so far he's had a tremendous camp. He's had a couple of sacks against LaRaven Clark, who's a guy with longer arms. So when you look at Nick Herbig, one of the red flags that he had coming in was that his length, right? Mm-hmm. He had shorter arms, not that tall. And, going up against a guy like LaRaven Clark, who isn't a starting tackle on the team, is a lengthier guy. And so it's a true test against his weakness, so to speak. And he was able to overcome those things at this venture. Mm-hmm. Now, let's see how it looks on pads. How impressed are you with Nick Herbig? Do you think that, he can maybe surpass a Marcus Golden?
Everything they're saying about Herbig is what I expected to hear. That's always a good sign. Mm-hmm. Coming out before the draft, we were all talking and when we had our watch party and I said before the draft, I thought that Herbig was the perfect fit because of his motor and his hustle and the attitude. And then of course his brother's already here. But I've said all along, is he an edge or is he off ball? His build and his dimensions scream off ball. Mm-hmm. And with all that motor and his mobility and his hitting, you say, well, he'd be a great off ball. But he's always played the edge, and he shows just a great ability to bend and accelerate around the arch. So going up and beating Clark is a stiff. I don't think Clark will make this roster. He's got great length, as you said. His arms is like 36 inches. But he does not move his feet well. He does not have good balance. So it doesn't shock me without pads that Herbig's just toasted him.
Mhm.
I want to see Herbig go up against a Corford or Dan Moore. And then let's see how he does. So I'm not trying to get too excited at this point because of who he's beating.
Right.
But, I mean, there's no doubt that he's going to bring so much to the table as a situational pass rusher and as a special teams dynamo. I think he's going to just crush some heads on special teams. I really do.
Well, I do too. I do too. I'm excited about the kid. I had some, I was one of his bigger critics about the length. I thought maybe moving into off-ball linebacker would probably be one of the bigger moves.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, well, I wouldn't say I was necessarily critical of him or his play. I thought he had a high motor. I thought he was very athletic and maybe perhaps because of his size and dimensions would fit better in the middle linebacker position. But I don't claim to know better than the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coaches. So if they think he's an outside guy and he's going to be successful there, then I'm all for it. And up to this point, although the competition isn't starter capable, it is against a person that is lengthy and I guess one of the weaknesses, and he's overcome that at this point. It's the first step. You can't overcome.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Yeah, you can only beat the person in front of you that you're put in front of you, and in the position. So I think it's pretty good. I think, I'm excited to see what he's able to bring. If he can turn into a guy that's just another third guy that can just be in rotation, it would be so good for this defense and for TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, for guys that take time off. There's many times where you'll see them take plays and go sit on the outside because of they're going at 110% every play that they're out there. And so they only play 70% of the snaps. So they need another guy in there. I think that he can rise up to the occasion. We're going to take a break real quick. Don't go anywhere on the YouTube side. Stay tuned. We're just going to take a 5-second break on audio side. Just a few words from our sponsors. And welcome back to the Hangover. Today we're talking about the pads. No pads doesn't mean no pressure. And we're going to be talking about training camp and camp battles up to this point. But before we get back into the conversation, I know you were on the Q&A last night, and you have Pump Your Brakes on Wednesday. That's a new channel. Tell us about Pump Your Brakes.
Yeah, they had come out with Pump the Brakes for Kevin Tate and Big G, who's my two new podcast partners. And so I needed somebody new, and they'd been filling in after Jeffrey Benedict had to leave for family reasons. Mm-hmm. And so they were doing a audio only on Tuesday mornings called Pump Your Brakes. And so we still was trying to find somebody permanent for the curtain call on Wednesdays. And so the powers of be decided the best thing to do would be move Pump Your Brakes permanently to Wednesday, where it's a YouTube podcast as well. Mm-hmm. And so they got the terrific trio, I'll say, of homies there. And, I'm the honorary hillbilly homie. So it's been a blast, and it's been well received. And I'm really appreciative of all the support we've gotten. And so it's a new podcast, but it seems like everybody's enjoying it thus far.
Awesome. That's on Wednesday nights at 8:30 Eastern, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Make sure if you guys if you guys watching this, you guys already like and subscribe, right? But if you haven't, for whatever reason, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. That way you're notified when we go live. We go live most every day except for Saturday, I believe, and that might change soon. And so you don't want to miss it. Hit that like and subscribe button. What about any articles coming out? You got anything coming out for SteelCurtainNetwork.com?
Well, today I had an article post about 3 Steelers who really took their off-season training regimen seriously. Mm-hmm. And in the article, I mentioned Dan Moore Jr.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Mark Robertson, and I mentioned Jaylen Warren. Because if you look, these are returning players. And we've seen the offseason work ethic is a precursor to production.
Mm-hmm.
TJ Watt, if you want to know what sets him apart, he's a great athlete in a league full of great athletes. What sets him apart is his insatiable work ethic. Alex Highsmith, how did he go from a walk-on with no stars to the 12th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL, just coming off a 14.5 sack season? It's that work ethic. You know, you either have it or you don't. And so this offseason, one way you can tell how hard a guy's been working is when they come in. George Pickens, footwork is totally different this year. He's much more. He's smoother. He's consistent. He's got variation to his routes. He sets up the defenders much better, which is allowing him to gain separation. It's those little nuances and the finer points. And when you see a guy put in that hard work, it shows up when they get to camp. But when I wrote this article, it was right from the first day, and we hadn't really seen anything. So what I was going by was their physiques. I had talked about Dan Moore. You know, he struggled against bull rush his first 2 years. And if you looked at him, he looked like a guy who had been heavier and then lost weight because he had some flab in the back part of his tricep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really wanting to be serious and compete for a starting position, that had to change. Well, all this offseason, he focused on his diet and his training regimen, his strength training. And if you see him this year, his upper body is much more defined. His arms are much more muscular and firm. You see the work he put in. Right. And he started working on the right side, you know, the fundamentals, so he can make a shift if necessary. The coaches didn't even tell him. That's a guy serious about, I'm going to start somewhere. And if this rookie first-round pick beats me on the left side, I'm going to try to win the right side. Then you look at Mark Robertson. He played last year about 235. I'm guessing he's 243 to 250, 243 to 245 now. He is another guy that his upper body is bigger. Now, why did he go and put in all that offseason work? Last year, he is very good at with instincts of finding holes and meeting runners, the ball carriers. But at times, like when he hit Nick Chubb, 2 times I watched him hit Chubb, and he's shorter, so he don't have that long reach. And he would try to wrap up Chubbs, and he would slide down him and not be able to complete the tackle.
Right.
So what does that tell you as a middle linebacker? You need to work on your grip strength and your core strength. Because when you get a hold of a guy like that, you got to be able to hang on and bring him down. And so if you see the work and you see his physique this year, the first day of camp, I was like, dang. He put in some hard work in the weight room.
No, for sure.
And then, of course, Jaylen Warren, we already called him the muscle hamster last year. Well, now he's 2.0 because he is thicker. Just as explosive, but he's thicker. So I think he realizes that he's going to have a heavier workload this year. And he wants to make sure that he can hold up and be even more effective than he was last year. So that's what the article's about. And if you haven't got a chance to read it, check it out.
Nice. I did link steelcurtainnetwork.com in the description, y'all. So if you guys want to check that out, just go to the description, hit the link, and it'll take you to all of our Steelers news and coverage right at your fingertips, right on your mobile device or anywhere you can find your Steelers information. You won't be disappointed. We're trying to bring back our bring up the channel. We also have on Twitter. If you're not familiar or not watching on Twitter, check us out at Steel Curtain Network also. So we're trying to build back the community, and we'd appreciate it if you go out there and follow, subscribe, and do the whole 9 yards. Now, you mentioned a couple of players that have transformed their body. One of them being Dan Moore. Well, there's not much he could have done to to stop Alex Highsmith nor Broderick Jones. I think Broderick Jones didn't allow a sack his collegiate career. Well, he would have allowed one the other day, and a pretty bad one against Alex Highsmith. How impressed are you with Alex Highsmith? He just got paid. Is he showing his worth right away? I know this is football, not in pads yet, but he sure is making those left tackles look silly.
That's why I'm so glad he got paid, because a lot of times you're like, a guy going into his contract year has an outstanding season. Mm-hmm. We've seen it with Bud Dupree and other players. Then they get paid, and then it's like, it's just something ain't the same. But when you talk about players who are truly, I don't want to use the word great for Alex Highsmith yet, but let's say they're one of the best at their position for a sustained period of time. It's more than just the money. It's that desire. It's that work ethic. It's all those things that make them who they are. And with Alex Highsmith, I was not afraid of his getting paid finally and having financial security affecting his work ethic in the slightest. And I think he still looks at himself as that walk-on that nobody wanted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's something it's a driving force always in the back of your mind. Jerry Rice said he always thought of himself as the, laying block with his dad. That's where he got his hands strong and all, because he laid block with his father. Right. And he was always scared when he caught the ball that he didn't want to get caught from behind because everybody said he was too slow. So he said he ran even faster. He said he ran faster with the ball and with helmet and pants on than he did running the 40. But it was that extra motivation. Right. That motivation, some players have to search for it. But a guy like Alex Highsmith has it because he wants to prove everybody wrong and say, yeah, you didn't believe in me, well, now look. Mm-hmm. And I think that it doesn't shock me. I feel sorry for anybody that they're going to match up against Alex Highsmith in that setting. No pads, and you just got to stop him from getting to the quarterback. I mean, he's that good. Yeah. He really is. And his pass rush repertoire is getting up at the top of the league because he has so many. The ghost move, the spin move, the dip. He can circle inside, between the tackle and guard. And he's just so effective because he's so strong. If you look at – I was looking at a picture of him as a rookie and looking at a picture of him this week, he's just totally rebuilt his body. Mm-hmm. Because, he struggled to set the edge as a rookie. Yeah. So what did he do? He went right in offseason, come back second year, much improved. That's what I'm talking about. He always has a plan, and he's very honest with himself, and he's like, I got to work on this, and he does it. And it ain't the coaches don't have to prod him, and they don't have to send trainers to his house. He just does it. So, yeah, I'm just I think the Steelers got a bargain. Because in 2 or 3 years, that contract's going to look so good. Oh yeah, and I think that he's the perfect Steeler. So I'm just thrilled that they have him.
Yeah, me too. I am too. I thought that he's gotten better every single year. He's increased his value as a player every single year, and that's what you want out of a player. You don't want him to regress. You don't want him to stay the same. You want him to get better. And he's one that did that, had 14.5 sacks last year. And, a lot of people say, he's not the same without TJ on the other side. Well, TJ was there last season, but he wasn't TJ from any of them, outside of one game. Yeah. And that was the first game. Yep. And so he was still able to put up some numbers, maybe perhaps next season with a healthy TJ, a healthy Cam, because Cam was also bummed. He had a bummed ankle for majority of the season. And Larry Ogunjobi was also injured for the majority of the season. They weren't practicing throughout the year, throughout the week, and then would play the game. All these guys are coming in healthy. You have a rejuvenated offense that we're hoping will be able to control the ball a lot better than what they were able to do last season. All indications are there. But let's talk about training camp. Let's talk about these rookies. It sure does look like baptism by fire. That's something that you had spoken to me about earlier. What are your thoughts on their performance up to this point? We had spoken about Elijah Riley. Were you aware of the player that he stepped in front of to get that interception?
No, I don't think.
Darnell Washington.
Oh, okay.
So these rookies have been put to the fire. What are your thoughts so far on their performance of 1 week in the training camp?
Well, Broderick Jones wasn't getting any reps with the first string. And then Chooks got a day off yesterday, I think it was. And then so Broderick Jones got to run at left tackle, and Dan Moore slid over to the right, which is great because all these guys need to be interchangeable. Of course, I'd just leave Broderick Jones on the left because it's a rookie, leave him alone there. But and as you said, he went up against Highsmith, and that's going up against the guy who's probably should have been a Pro Bowler last year.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still got some things he has to work on because in college he's so athletic. He got by on athleticism, which is very typical. But when you get to the pros, everybody's athletic, and you don't have that clear advantage. So, but he's got the work ethic. He's going to be fine. We talked about it before the show. Joey Porter Jr. has been matched up with Deontay Johnson, who's one of the best in the NFL route runners at getting early separation. Then he's going up against George Pickens, who's much improved this year, and he's the opposite. He's a totally different type of receiver than Deontay. So that's great experience for JPJ, because if he can do that against these two guys, that's a good sign that he'll be able to really contribute this year. And Corey Trice has looked very good as well. Even though, he's the seventh rounder and a lot of people ain't counting on him, I think he's going to contribute this year. I really do. So he's looked well. Pickens did burn him yesterday. He set him up and burned him deep.
Done.
But, that's going to happen. So we already talked about Nick Herbig and how good he's looked. And one thing I like, we ain't hearing a lot about Benton, Kanawi Benton, but he did get in a little bit of a physical altercation with Mason Cole.
Really?
And I like that. Why I like that is because so many rookies are kind of in awe, and they're like, they see these guys they've seen on TV, and so at first, they're feeling their way. So for that first week of camp, and they ain't even pads on yet, the fact that he's fiery and him and Cole getting a little bit of a shoving match and some words were exchanged, that's just good. That's competitiveness on both sides. That's a veteran saying, come on, Rook. Now we don't have pads on. You got to chill a little bit. But Benton's like, you're going to respect me. So I like that. They said Darnell Washington looked a little bit unsure the first couple of days. See, again, no pads. Now, when the pads go on and he's really run blocking, then you're going to see what we're expecting him to be a huge impact this year is his run blocking. But after that first day, since then, he's catching some big plays. I know he caught a touchdown. He caught one pass running down the sidelines that I would have not wanted to see one of them cornerbacks tackle him at full speed. Yeah. Thankfully, at this point in camp, they didn't have to.
Right.
So, and one guy that we're not really talking about, but Spencer Anderson has already played all three interior positions and right tackle. And we know that he can play all five positions.
Yeah.
And I love that versatility. He has, unlike Kendrick Green, Spencer Anderson has good arm length. He's 6'5". He can play tackle, but I think I've had a guy from Maryland swear to me that he thinks Spencer Anderson's future is at center.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to see somebody with his versatility make the team and knock Kendrick Green off the roster.
I was going to say, man, Kendrick Green has been playing the backup center position behind Mason Cole pretty consistently at this point.
He's had a good camp so far, yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure, there's no pads also, so we gotta tone it down because that's usually when we figure something out, especially when it comes to Kendrick Green. Now, there's been a viral video that's going out there, and you spoke a little bit about Darnell Washington being unsure, and I think that might be a a situation amongst all the rookies. There's a viral video going out where George Pickens is about 15 yards downfield knocking Joey Porter Jr. on his butt.
Yeah.
And so, one, that probably is a penalty. Two, I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that, Joey Porter Jr. is aware that, you have a physical receiver who's not afraid to go push him down without pads in the middle of the field. And I don't think you're going to have that happen anymore. I think maybe we're going to start to see some of these guys kind of turn the tables a little bit and get physical back. And, I think early on, they're in a situation where there's their first training camp. They don't have pads on. And maybe they're a little bit unsure of how far they can thread the needle, so to speak, or push the envelope as far as what they can get away with hitting and things like that. So, I'm excited for pads, especially for these rookies to, maybe turn it around and prove themselves, because the veterans sure have done a number on them. Another veteran that's coming in, or a second-year player now, Kenny Pickett, is looking very good so far. There's been a lot of praise coming out of camp. Arm looks stronger. He looks bigger, tougher, stronger. I've seen a couple of deep passes. It appears that the Pittsburgh Steelers are emphasizing on going, splash, basically.
Yeah.
How excited are you so far about this offensive play and play of the quarterback position so far? And how excited are you about, the word coming out that this is a different offense than what we've seen these last couple of years?
Well, it has to be. The key to everything for the what they're wanting to accomplish on offense, more splash plays, more points on the board. I mean, they got to score more. It all comes down to that offensive line. The offensive line has been a huge weakness for 4 years. And now, if you look at their offensive line, it could be one of the best in the NFL. It could easily be top 10.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, especially that interior, they might have the best guard tandem in football. That is going to make such a huge difference. And everything will flow from that. It starts in the trenches. And that will open up the running game. That will open up play action. And they're set up with these receivers they've got and tight ends and running backs that they get attacked from so many different. I don't think we're going to see a Deontay Johnson get force-fed 142 targets again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect that at all. I think we're going to see the ball spread around. I think you're going to see a more complete offense. And what's making that possible? And for a guy like Kenny Pickett in his second year to take that next step, it all has to start with that offensive line. So I am thrilled with that. I've been praying that they would be able to improve that offensive line. And with what they've already accomplished and what it can be once they play together, Broderick Jones gets experience. I'm very excited about the future. And a lot of that offensive success is going to come from that O-line.
No, I agree 100%. I think that the offensive line is definitely going to carry this team. I like what I saw last season out of the offensive line as far as what they were doing, running the ball. It definitely felt heavy, one, top heavy as far as, one side heavy, being that it was very good against the run. Pass was still very suspect.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, Kenny not getting sacked as much as, other quarterbacks was because Kenny's ability to move in the pocket and his mobility more so than he having clean pockets. Now, there were moments where he did leave clean pockets, during the season last year as well. But, that also came towards the end of the year once the offensive line started to come together. Now, I, for one, think that Seumalo is a huge upgrade over Kevin Dotson.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, let's just say at the end of last season, I wouldn't have pointed at Kevin Dotson and said that he was a huge weakness. I thought that he was developing well. He was a little bit slower than what probably the Steelers or most of the fans had wanted. But I thought that he was finally turning the corner, and I thought he did a pretty good year. He had a pretty good year last year. But, definitely would take Seumalo over him. Broderick Jones, I think, is a guy that's going to be a guy this year. I think he's going to see the field this year. Omar Khan all but said it. He said that he's going to have to win the position, but they didn't move up basically in the first round for nothing. So I think that he's going to have to win it, and he very well could. But yeah, I'm excited about Kenny. George Pickens is another guy that looks well improved. You mentioned his running and his feet. There was another play that he scored a touchdown on. That was in goal line situation where he was wide open, and he had the safety and Corey Tries biting on the inside, and he kind of turned it out towards the outside. Do you think George Pickens can be wide receiver one over Deontay Johnson? Do you think he can be the guy that gets the majority of the targets this season?
Well, again, I think it's going to be spread out. Um, I've kind of predicted early on the Homies podcast. They had me on and a few weeks ago, and I said I think Pat Freiermuth may be the only 1,000-yard receiver this year. Because I think Freiermuth is going to develop a really special rapport with Kenny Pickett, being that security blanket, that reliable guy. I think that Allen Robertson is going to be that third down guy that he's going to look for a lot at the receiver position. I think Pickens is going to be much improved, but I think the targets are going to be split amongst these four guys. So I think Pickens will be the most explosive receiver and will be a still looked at as the next future number one guy. But I just don't know if we're going to see a huge jump in numbers, because I think really you're going to see a lot more Connor Hayward. I think we're going to see Najee Harris get involved in the passing game more this year. I think that Calvin Austin III is going to be a weapon. They've said, multiple players and coaches, that if he's healthy, he is going to be a big part of their game plan. So I think we're going to see everything spread out more as far as who's getting targets and opportunities. But that's going to make them harder. They're not going to be predictable. And it's going to make it harder to defend.
100%, 100%. You mentioned Calvin Austin. That's a guy that I'm excited to see if he can transition also into pads. He's got the speed. He's got the intangibles when it comes to those things. Height obviously is the biggest concern. Size. He's on the smaller end of the spectrum there. But if he can, avoid taking big hits and also, stay healthy, I think this guy can have a pivotal role on this offense. And it was, it's been often speculated that last season he was supposed to have had a huge role on this offensive for the offensive scheme there. A lot of those jet sweeps and things like that were more designed for Calvin Austin versus a Gunnar Olszewski or even a Steven Sims that ended up getting a lot of those plays. I'm excited to see if he's able to come back in and translate onto the field. Does he look the same? Does he look like he's dropped a step or anything to you coming off of the foot injury?
No, I noticed he didn't pull away on a couple of deep balls. One time he had Trey Norwood on him. The Trey Norwood's not swift. And he got a step, and I thought he's going to leave him. And Trey Norwood used his height to deflect the pass. That was on the first day. Now, he struggled on that first day, and he had 3 drops, but he's really bounced back since then. But that concerned me. I'm like, has he lost a little bit? Well, then it might have been yesterday. He called a crosser across the middle of the field, and he just ran away from everybody. Nobody had a shot. It would have been whatever. If it had been at the 20, it would have been an 80-yard touchdown because that's the kind of speed he has. And then I'm like, no, he still got it. It's just a couple of the passes, and I seen somebody mention it earlier, have been a little underthrown because it's going to take them a little bit of time to get used to throwing to a guy with his speed.
Yeah.
He's outrunning the ball. So it's like Ben used to say, I just throw it as far as I can, and Wallace goes and gets it. He said you can't overthrow him because Wallace will run it down. That's kind of like what we're talking about with Austin, is you got to just put it out there and let him go get it.
Yeah, 100%. He definitely does. To me, it looks like the burst is back and the speed is there.
Yeah.
Like I saw that play across over the center of the field there, and that was also with Trey Norwood trailing. But yeah, he left everybody behind. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about a lot of these players. I'm waiting. I can't wait for, you know, pads to be on. There's already a lot of physicalness going on. Landon Roberts apparently had some words with Najee Harris about keeping his head up. I'm not sure if you'd seen that.
No, I ain't seen that. No.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the scenario was, but it was. I think it was Mark Caboli had put it out there. It's something about calls out Najee Harris to practice, told him to pick up his head, and so whatever
It
that
probably just
means.
showed frustration.
Yeah.
Maybe he dropped a pass or fumbled the ball or something, and guys get, everybody can be hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And probably that's a coach like, hey, shake it off, get your head up and get ready for the next rep. So I'm sure that's not a big deal.
Yeah, apparently it was a play. It was a stretch to the outside where Roberts forced Harris out of bounds on a minimal gain, and he was told, "You better pick your expletive head," by Roberts, according to Mark Caboli. So interesting. I'm excited, man. Back on backers, we'll put them together. Let's see what they got.
Oh yeah.
That's what I mean. The Oklahoma drill that'll solve a lot of problems. I'm looking forward to it. The health is going to be one thing that we're all going to keep an eye on, and hopefully, knock on wood, the Pittsburgh Steelers stay healthy this offseason. Friday Night Lights. That's Friday, ain't it?
I don't think it's.
Or is it
Friday.
next Friday?
I think it's usually. I think it's the third Friday.
Third Friday. Friday.
So I don't think it'll be this week.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's next week. I'm looking forward to that. I was thinking about going out there. I'm not sure yet. Still up in the air, but I'm excited about this. I'm excited for preseason and then the regular season. Do you have any final words or anything before we let everybody go there, Shannon?
No, just I'd seen the one comment talking about Calvin Austin. There was a couple of after each day of camp, they'll put a winners, losers out, which is, that changes each day. And Calvin Austin had a rough first day, like I mentioned, but since then he's rebounded. They had a lot of rain. And I think that was Friday. Mm-hmm. And, Pickett struggled, but, but he's rebounded nicely since then. Again, this is the early portions of camp, and guys are knocking the rust off and getting their timing down. And one thing we got to remember, this Steeler team has got it's just full of new faces. They're a lot of these guys have never played together before at all, and they're getting accustomed to each other. So it's only going to get better. And we're already seeing a lot of exciting stuff. So just, don't get overly excited, with good news or bad news, because it's going to get better.
See, for me, I'm the opposite. I say get overly excited. The Steelers are going to the Super Bowl. We're going to win it all, y'all. So, until next time, Shannon, I know you're going to be on Wednesday night on Pump Your Brakes. Make sure you go and check that. Tomorrow night is the Sco Bros on the Sco Bros. So without further ado, Shannon, take us out.